Chapter 7, Skeletal System. The objectives for this chapter is the classification of bones. Then we'll go over the characteristics of long bones, ossification types, bone growth and remodeling, fractures, fracture repair, hematopoiesis, homeostasis of calcium. Bones are organs of the skeletal system because bones are composed of many different types of tissues. Might be a question about these. So bones are made up of bone tissue or osseous tissue, but there's also cartilage, dense connective tissue, blood, and nervous tissue. Bones are alive because they're made up of cells. Different types of bones are long, short, flat, irregular bones. Long bones are long and narrow. So some of the different examples: humerus, femur, tibia, radius, ulna. Short bones are small cube-like bones, so carpals, tarsals, but also our knee bone, which is the patella. Patella is a sesamoid bone, meaning that it's located within tendons or ligaments. Flat bones, so these are plate-like. Scapula, our ribs, and our skull bones. Then the irregular bones, these have different shapes, and they have one or more than one hole inside. The different examples are vertebrae, hip bone, also our scaphoid and ethmoid. Those are also irregular bones. Next, we'll go over the characteristics of a long bone, the different parts. So all these underlying parts will be asked. Know that epiphyses, these are the two ends of the bone, so the upper and the lower parts, meaning the proximal and the distal ends of the long bone. Diaphysis is the middle part. This is the shaft of the bone, the narrow part. Articular cartilage lines the ends of the bones, so covers the epiphyses where the bone joins with another bone. Compact bone. This means a solid layer of bone. This is on the outer part of the bone. Versus spongy or cancellous bone. This is on the inside of the bone. This is the part of the bone that has holes. Trabeculae. Know that this is just describing spongy bone, so it really means the branching bony plates, but know that trabeculae makes up spongy bone. Here's a picture showing a cross-section of a bone and how compact bone is on the outer part, is the solid part, then the spongy bone is the inner part with the holes. And so you're seeing the trabeculae over here. A few more parts for the long bone. Periosteum, the covering of the bone. This is actually the outer connective tissue. And so this is protective for the bone. It has bone cells to help with repair. Medullary cavity, also known as the marrow cavity. This is the canal on the inside of the bone. This part has marrow inside, but also blood vessels and nerves going through. Then the endosteum. This is also connective tissue, but it's on the inside of the bone. So it's where you have the spaces in the bone. So for example, the marrow cavity, medullary cavity, is lined with the endosteum. Then the bone marrow. Bone marrow can be red or yellow marrow. But there are two distinctions between them. So red marrow, we're going to get to this in a little bit. Red marrow makes blood cells. So it's a special type of tissue. It has stem cells that turn into different blood cells, meaning like into red blood cells, white blood cells, or the cells that turn into platelets. Yellow marrow, on the other hand, does not make blood cells, but yellow marrow is just fat. Here's a picture showing the more microscopic view of the bone. And so when you look in the compact bone, we see these trunk shapes. These trunk shapes go up and down inside of our bones. These are called osteons. So just like tree trunks, they're very strong. They give our bone that very important strength, and they keep the shape of the bone. And so here again, compact bone consists of osteons. Osteons are the structural and functional units of bone. So again, these are the tree trunks. When you look at these osteons, just like with a tree trunk, we see tree rings. So these rings making up the osteons, lamella. So these rings are circular, they're going around the central canal. Central canal is the canal running on the inside of each osteon, and this includes the blood vessels and the nerves. Perforating canals are canals going in between the central canals in the different osteons. So in the picture, it's this part here. This picture won't be on your exam, but it's showing here what a perforating canal means. And then blood vessels that are going inside the central canal or in the perforating canals, these blood vessels are providing nutrients and oxygen and then taking away the waste products. Mature bone cells are called osteocytes. Osteocytes are sitting inside chambers called the lacunae. So here, if the dot inside is the osteocytes, that outer circle is the lacuna. And so it's a protective covering this chamber that's holding the osteocyte in the inside. Lacuna is the singular word, meaning or otherwise lacunae is the plural. Then osteocytes have these little roads, canals in between them. These are called canaliculi. So if I make another osteocyte here with the lacuna, and if I draw little lines in between, and so here, that would be a canaliculus. That's a singular word, and I could make another one. And so these canaliculi are used to exchange substances, materials between the osteocytes. Then know that in addition to calcium and other minerals, bone contains many collagen fibers. So the collagen gives the bone resilience, and then the inorganic salts, meaning the minerals, make the bones hard and strong. Next, we'll go through how bones develop in a fetus. So bone development starts in a 14-week fetus. There are two types of ossification, meaning bone formation. Intramembranous ossification. Know that this forms flat bones, meaning your scapula, skull bones, ribs are made through this intramembranous ossification type. Know that here, bones are developing from primitive connective tissue, also called as mesenchyme or mesoderm, and so this is an embryonic tissue that's slowly turning to bone. The other type of bone formation is endochondral ossification. This forms the rest of our bones, meaning the long bones, short bones, irregular bones. But know that here, these bones are developing from hyaline cartilage. Here, these set of pictures is showing how intramembranous ossification actually works. And so the background here is the mesoderm or the mesenchyme, that primitive connective tissue. So because of growth factors, hormones, here bone cells are appearing. But here at first, it's the osteoblasts that are forming. These are the builders of bone. So they appear, they're actually developing, then they're making the bone. Once they make the bone, once they build the bone, and then when they're surrounded by bone, then we call the cells osteocytes. And so osteocytes are the mature bone cells. And so slowly here the bone is forming. First the spongy bone is made, then the compact bone is laid on the outside. So the important thing is osteoblasts, these build bone, make bone, and they're also making collagen fibers. Then once they make the bone, these turn into osteocytes. And this next picture shows how endochondral ossification works. And so here we start out with cartilage for hyaline cartilage. Now with endochondral ossification, primary ossification center means that the diaphysis is forming. And so it's primary because this is the part that forms first. Secondary ossification center instead means that the epiphyses are forming. So these are the top and the bottom parts, the proximal and distal ends of the bone. So because they form after the diaphysis, these are called the secondary ossification centers. Okay, then after birth, there is still cartilage between the epiphysis and the diaphysis at both ends. So during childhood, adolescence, this cartilage allows the bones to grow in length, also to become wider as well. But then, once we finish growing, this cartilage all turns to bone. So here, know that epiphyseal plate, also known as growth plate, this is when you still see cartilage. But then when it finally turns to bone, you instead are going to see an epiphyseal line. And so no more cartilage here with the epiphyseal line. This picture shows how cartilage is slowly turning to bone. When that growth plate, the epiphyseal plate, is turning to bone here. So here the cartilage cells first go through mitosis, they multiply, but then they slowly start to die, and then the cartilage is converted to bone.